They say time earns you respect. I believed that once, when I was still naive enough to think showing up mattered more than blood. That if you worked hard enough, stayed long enough, paid enough, eventually they'd see. Eventually they'd choose you, not the man who vanished. But time is a cruel investment when no one's keeping the books. I married Karen 6 years ago, and with her came Tyler, 13 at the time, angry at everything but especially me. His father had left when he was 8. Not suddenly, nothing so clean. He just got quieter, colder. Visits got shorter. Phone calls stopped. Birthdays turned into envelopes, and even those stopped eventually. And in his place I arrived. Soft-spoken, hard-working. The man who bought groceries, fixed the leaks, paid the bills. I thought that would be enough. It wasn't. From day one, Tyler looked at me like a stranger who'd sat in his father's chair. And I sat there anyway. I smiled through gritted teeth. I showed up at his games. I taught him to change a tire. Helped him study for math finals. I waited. Not for thanks, just for something. A sign that I mattered. That being steady in a storm meant something. Karen would say, "He'll come around, Jim. He just needs time." Always time. As if time by itself could turn resentment into respect. But I gave Tyler 6 years. 6 years of walking on eggshells in a house where my name was on the mortgage but not on the family photos. Where I signed every check, paid every unexpected fee, but still knocked on his bedroom door like a guest. I remember once, maybe 2 years in, I called him son in front of my brother. Just slipped out. We were at a cookout, flipping burgers, and someone asked how many kids I had now. I said, 1 boy, Tyler, my son. Didn't think twice. Later that night, Tyler cornered me in the hallway. "Don't call me that," he said, his voice low, sharp. "Don't call me son. You're not my dad." Stung, but I nodded. I backed down. I let it go because Karen asked me to, because she said it was just a phase, because she needed peace more than she needed truth. So I told myself, all right, don't call him son. Just keep showing up. Keep carrying the weight until it means something. And I did. Quietly. Consistently. I learned not to expect anything in return. Tyler never said thank you when I covered his dental work. Never mentioned the late-night drives to pick him up from parties when his friends left him stranded. Never offered a word of gratitude when I co-signed for his first car, even though his real dad, the man who gave him his name, couldn't even be bothered to answer a phone call. Still, I waited. I thought love, when done right, was a kind of patience. I thought I was building a bond he'd look back on someday and see as the real thing. Deeper than blood. Earned, not given. But there was always a distance between us. A quiet coldness. The way he never made eye contact when I walked into the room. The way he addressed every question to Karen, even when I was the one with the answer. And Karen, she noticed, but she didn't act. She thought love was endurance. She thought if we just didn't make waves, eventually we'd find calm waters. The worst part? I believed her. It was a Saturday when the crack became a fracture. Tyler had his friends over. 4 of them, loud and cocky. Their sneakers kicking up gravel in the driveway I repaved last fall. They piled into the garage with energy only 17-year-olds have. Laughing too loud, tossing footballs around like they owned the place. I didn't mind. I was glad he had people, that he wasn't locked in his room staring at a screen. But then the laughter turned into banging. Tools crashing to the floor. Something heavy hit the wall. I walked out, opened the garage door partway, and asked them to keep it down. Not yelling, not scolding, just a calm request. They quieted. I closed the door and turned back toward the house. And then I heard it. His voice. Clear, sharp, cutting through the garage like a knife through soft wood. God, he's pathetic. Thinks he's my dad or something. Laughter followed. Nervous, awkward, the kind that boys give when they know they've just crossed a line but want to look tough anyway. I stopped walking. I didn't go back inside. I didn't shout or open the door again. I just stood there on the driveway, staring down at the concrete I'd poured with my own hands, feeling like I'd been punched in the chest. He said it like it was obvious. Like it was ridiculous that I'd think I had any place in his life beyond paying bills and staying silent. I don't know how long I stood there. Minutes, maybe. Long enough for the laughter to fade and the pain to settle in. That night, after his friends had gone, after the garage door was closed and Karen was upstairs folding laundry, I sat down across from him at the dining table. He didn't look up from his phone. "I heard what you said earlier," I told him. "In the garage." Still scrolling. No shame. "Yeah? So? You called me pathetic." That got his attention. He looked up then, his eyes hard, unflinching. "I did. I waited. For an apology. For a flicker of regret. For something. Anything." Instead, he shrugged. "Don't act surprised. You're not my father. Stop pretending. And stop calling me son." The words hit like cold water down my spine. He didn't raise his voice. He didn't lash out. He just said it calm, final, like a verdict handed down after years of quiet trial. "You're not my father. Stop pretending." The room didn't spin. My heart didn't race. It just sank. Like a stone in deep water. Karen came down a few minutes later, asked if everything was okay. I told her we were fine, because I knew then the line had been drawn, and she wasn't going to cross it for me. So I sat alone for a long time after they went to bed. Just me and the hum of the refrigerator, the ticking of the old clock above the sink, and the echo of his words still ringing in my ears. "You're not my father. Stop pretending." I had spent 6 years building something out of silence and sacrifice, and in a single moment, Tyler had shattered it like glass. I didn't cry. I didn't rage. I didn't even go upstairs that night. I slept on the couch, staring at the ceiling, counting the hours until morning. And somewhere between 2 and 3 a.m., I made a quiet decision. If he didn't see me as a father, I would stop acting like one. Not out of spite, out of truth. Because if love is only expected, never returned, it's not love. The servitude. And I was done serving someone who saw me as nothing. After that night, something in me calcified. Not overnight. Not in one dramatic flash. But slowly, like water turning to ice. A stillness crept into the way I looked at things. At the calendar on the wall. At the framed photos on the mantel. At the receipts stuffed into my wallet. All the things I used to hold up as evidence that I belonged, they started to look like warnings instead. I stopped saying "our son" when I talked about Tyler. I started saying "your boy" when Karen asked about his schedule, his car, his classes. She didn't correct me. Maybe she noticed. Maybe she didn't. By then, I had stopped hoping for much either way. I became obsessed with remembering every detail, every dollar, every quiet sacrifice that built the scaffolding of Tyler's life. The car that came first. I found it on Craigslist 3 months after his 16th birthday. A used Honda, clean title, decent mileage. I paid $4,800 in cash and drove it home myself. Tyler didn't thank me. Not really. He took the keys, said, "Cool," and drove off without asking how long I'd worked overtime to make it happen. A week later, he rear-ended a mailbox while texting. I paid the mechanic. $1,120. New bumper. Realigned frame. He never mentioned it again. Insurance? I added him to my plan. Watched the premium jump and bit down on the bitterness. That was another $300 a month. Karen promised she'd cover half. But the subject never came up again. I paid. Silently. When he needed a laptop for school. Top of the line, gaming specs, though he claimed it was for homework. I said yes. $1,700. Gone in an instant. He left the box on the kitchen counter for me to throw away. Braces. $4,400 out of pocket after insurance. I remember that because I skipped my own dental checkup 3 years in a row to cover it. My molars ached every time he smiled. I kept a spreadsheet eventually. Not at first. I wasn't that petty. But somewhere along the way, I needed a way to remind myself that I wasn't crazy. That this wasn't just fatherly instinct. That I was being bled. Textbooks? I bought them. Tuition deposits? I made them. When he applied to that state university, I sat up at night filling out FAFSA forms while he played Xbox in the next room. I memorized his social security number before he did. Then came the apartment. The one near campus. Karen insisted he'd do better living on his own. It'll teach him responsibility, she said. So I co-signed the lease. $1,100 a month, plus utilities. Autopay. Always on time. He didn't even know what day rent was due. Never needed to. Phone bill. Dentist appointments. Oil changes. Gas cards. Grocery gift cards. Venmo transfers labeled for food that I knew damn well went to beer and concert tickets. It didn't matter. I kept giving. And he kept taking. Over 6 years, I gave over $20,000 to a boy who never once called me dad without being asked to. And still, I stayed. I stayed because I told myself that's what good men do. They fill the gaps. They cover the faults. They build the bridge and don't complain when no one walks back across it to say thank you. But I saw it all now in brutal clarity. The quiet contempt. The way he'd nod when I paid, then forget I existed the moment the receipt was in the trash. Even his friends picked up on it. Once, I drove them to a concert 2 hours away because Karen didn't want him driving on the interstate at night. After I dropped them off, I waited in the parking lot for 3 hours until the show ended. When they piled back into the car, one of the boys asked Tyler, "That your dad?" Tyler laughed. "Nah, that's just Jim. Just Jim." Like I was the guy who installed cable or mowed the lawn. Not the man who made his life possible. And Karen, she let it slide. That was her crime. Not hostility. Not cruelty. Just silence. The kind of silence that permits disrespect to rot the floorboards of a family until everything collapses under the weight of what no one is willing to say. I once asked her, gently, why she never corrected him. Why she never stepped in when he dismissed me, ignored me, mocked me. She looked away and said, "I don't want to make things worse." Worse for who? Not for me. It was already worse. She just didn't want to be the villain in his eyes. So I got to play that part by default, the outsider. The man who showed up, paid up, shut up. Until one day I didn't. And that day was coming. I felt it like a storm building behind my ribs. The day I would stop pretending. Because here's the truth no one wants to say out loud. When you give without boundaries, without being seen, without being valued, your giving becomes invisible. Expected. Taken for granted. And eventually resented. And I had become the man they resented, not because I failed them, but because I reminded them of their failures. Tyler resented me for showing up where his real father hadn't. Karen resented me for pointing out, by my very existence, that love without discipline is just cowardice in a prettier dress. They never said that aloud. They didn't have to. It lived in the air of that house. In the quiet glances. In the way Tyler rolled his eyes when I asked if he'd cleaned his room. In the way Karen hesitated just a second too long before siding with me in any argument. I carried them for 6 years. Quietly, faithfully, with both hands. But love without respect is just servitude. And I was not born to serve people who couldn't look me in the eye and acknowledge what I had given them. That night in the garage when he called me pathetic, it broke something in me. But the break didn't look like rage. It looked like silence. Cold, measured silence. The kind that says, "I see now, and I'm done waiting to be seen in return." I didn't bring it up again. Not to Tyler. Not to Karen. I just started keeping score. Not to punish, but to remember. Because forgetting had cost me too much. I started walking through the house like a man preparing to leave a place he once believed was home. My hands touched the furniture differently. My eyes lingered longer on bills and keys and documents. I began to reclaim something that had slowly been bled from me over 6 years. My self-respect. It didn't look like much. Just small shifts. I stopped offering to pick Tyler up from campus. I stopped reminding Karen when his rent was due. I stopped transferring those little extra, just-in-case funds to his account. And when no one noticed, that told me everything. They hadn't seen me in a long time. Not really. I had been a shadow in their lives. One that paid, fixed, funded, and disappeared. But shadows can vanish. And when they do, you find out just how much light they were blocking or holding up. The final straw was watching Tyler post photos of his new sneakers, $200, maybe more, bought with a gift card I gave him last Christmas. The caption read, "Self-made." Self-made. I stared at the screen for a long time. Not angry, just hollow. That's when I knew. The line was coming. And this time I'd be the one to draw it. But not with a speech. Not with a fight. Not with slammed doors or raised voices. No, I would draw it the way I had lived in that house. Quietly, deliberately, with numbers, with switches flipped, with support withdrawn like oxygen from a room. And when the air ran out, they'd feel it. Not because I wanted them to suffer, but because I needed them to understand what I had been all along. Not just Jim, but the foundation. And you don't spit on a foundation and expect the house to stand. The beautiful thing about support is that it leaves no visible trace until it's gone. That's the illusion I had built for them. A life that seemed effortless, automatic, as if comfort fell from the sky instead of bleeding from my hours, my planning, my wallet. They didn't know what I held together. That was the point. When I did it right, nothing felt urgent. Nothing ever felt like it was at risk. But now I wanted them to feel the risk. Not as vengeance, but as truth. It started with a spreadsheet. I opened the one I'd kept for years, the file with all the boring numbers. Insurance, tuition, utilities, cards, lease dates, auto-pay schedules. It had tabs for everything. Tyler's rent, Tyler's car, Tyler's phone. And in each tab, the same quiet pattern. My name, my money, my effort. I scrolled through the rows and felt it in my gut. The steady erosion of a man trying to buy his way into a family that never intended to let him in. I didn't delete anything. I just rewrote it. The same way I had been rewritten in that house. I started small. Insurance first. Tyler was listed on my car policy. I had added him the day he passed his test. Karen had hugged me and said, "Thank you, Jim. That's a big help." And I remember thinking, maybe this is it. Maybe this is the moment I become more than convenient. That moment never came. So now, I logged in, found his name under additional drivers, and removed him. Just like that. One click. A subtle deletion of responsibility. The kind no one sees until they crash. I moved on. The tuition auto-pay. $2,200 due in 10 days. It had always come from my account, quietly. I never let it lapse. Even when Tyler skipped classes or tanked midterms, I paid. Because that's what a father does, right? He builds the floor even when the kid keeps jumping on it. I canceled it. Not with anger, with precision. Removed my account details. Called the financial office and confirmed the change. The woman on the phone sounded confused. "Are you sure, sir? This could cause a hold on his enrollment." I smiled. "Yes, that's the idea." Then came the gas card, the one I'd set up when he started commuting. I froze it. Not closed, just frozen. Unusable like my presence in his life. Next was the dentist. Tyler had a cleaning scheduled next month. I called the office and removed myself as guarantor. Let them send the bill to Karen or whoever else wanted the title of dad without the duties. Then came the mechanic's discount. There's a shop downtown, a little place I've used for years. Good people. They give me deals because I've brought them business, helped them set up a payroll system a while back. Tyler had been riding that connection for months. Free oil changes. Half-price brakes. A new alternator last fall, charged to my account. A silent favor from a mechanic who thought he was helping a real son. I drove there in person. Sat across from the owner, Mike. Told him the truth. Don't put Tyler's work on my name anymore. Mike looked surprised. "Everything okay?" I nodded. "It's just time." He didn't push. He understood more than most. By the time I left the shop, the scaffolding had started to come down. Quietly, cleanly, like a man rolling up the blueprints of a building he was never allowed to live in. I didn't tell Karen. I didn't tell Tyler. That was the point. I wanted them to discover it the way I had discovered the truth. Suddenly, brutally, without warning. Tyler had declared I wasn't his father. That I had no right to the title, no claim to the name, no place at his table. Fine. Let the man who was his father carry the burden now. Let the ghost handle the bills. It was a strange kind of peace, watching my obligations fall away like old leaves. For the first time in years, I wasn't moving money from account to account at midnight. I wasn't checking balances in the middle of meetings. I wasn't chasing a feeling of worth that had been denied at every turn. I slept better, deeper, colder. Karen didn't notice at first. She was too busy juggling her own orbit. Tyler came home some weekends, dropped his laundry on the floor, ate half the fridge, and left again. She called it normal college behavior. I called it disrespect, but quietly to myself behind closed doors. There was a moment, maybe a week into the process, when I almost reversed it. I was staring at the calendar, realizing tuition would be past due soon. My finger hovered over the Pay Now button, muscle memory begging me to fix things like I always had. But I stopped, because that button wasn't payment. It was permission. Permission for Tyler to keep living a life funded by a man he'd publicly erased. Permission for Karen to keep pretending her silence was neutral. Permission for the rot to keep spreading. So I shut the laptop. That night, Karen asked if I'd mailed Tyler's birthday card. I said no. She looked up from the sink, mildly surprised. I thought you always handled that. I just said, not this year. She didn't ask why. Maybe she was afraid of the answer. The thing about stepping back is, it's not loud. It's not dramatic. It's not a speech or a door slam. It's absence. The kind of absence that slowly grows until it can't be ignored. Like missing steps in a staircase. Like breath pulled from a room. The days passed. I watched as the first consequences started to stir. Emails from the school. Missed calls from the mechanic. Karen mumbling about Tyler sounding frustrated on the phone. I said nothing. Offered no suggestions. No solutions. I wasn't his father, remember? That was Tyler's line, not mine. And lines, once drawn, must be honored. There was one last thing I had to do. The lease. I still had access to his apartment portal. It was under my name. I had set it up that way because he was 17 at the time, and legally someone had to be the adult. I logged in and removed my name from the account. Took 2 steps. An online form. An email to the landlord. I expected resistance. Some request for verification. Instead, I got a single reply. Understood. Account updated. Future communications will be sent to Tyler Morris only. Morris. Not my name. Never was. I stared at that signature for a long time. Then I closed the email, shut down the computer, and turned off the light. In the darkness, I felt something shift inside me. Not joy, not relief, but integrity. For once, my actions matched the truth. I was done pretending. The first ripple came sooner than I expected. I was in the kitchen, making coffee, when Karen walked in holding her phone like it had just bitten her. She had that stiff look people wear when something has gone wrong but they haven't decided who to blame yet. Tyler just called, she said. I didn't look up. Yeah. He said something's wrong with the tuition payment. They froze his account. I poured the coffee slowly, deliberately, like I needed the rhythm to steady my breath. Sounds like a problem, I said. She waited for more. An explanation. Plan. A fix. Something I'd always given before. But I stayed quiet, watching the cream swirl into the black. What's going on, Jim? Her voice wasn't angry yet, just confused. But beneath it, I heard the rising panic. The cracks forming in a system she hadn't realized was held together by me alone. I turned toward her. There's no problem, I said calmly. I canceled the payment. She blinked. You what? I canceled it. Removed my account. Told the school not to expect another cent from me. Her jaw tightened. Why would you do that? I set the mug down. Because I'm not his father. Remember? The words landed heavy. She opened her mouth, closed it, looked away. That silence, her silence, told me she understood. She may not have agreed, but she understood. She left the kitchen without another word. Later that afternoon, the storm arrived in person. Tyler. He came barreling through the front door, red-faced and loud. No warning. No knock. Just fury wrapped in entitlement. You cut me off? I didn't stand. I was sitting in the living room, reading. A book I hadn't touched in years. He looked ridiculous, pacing like a child whose toy had been stolen. They froze my school account. My landlord says the rent bounced. I went to get gas and the card declined. What the hell, Jim? I closed the book slowly, marked the page. I told you not to call me that, I said. His face twisted. What? You told me I wasn't your father, so don't call me by the name fathers get. I'm just Jim, right? He stared at me, breathing hard. You can't just drop everything. You've been paying this whole time. You don't get to just stop. I leaned back in the chair. I didn't stop being a father. You stopped seeing me as one. There's a difference. His hands balled into fists. This is messed up. You're ruining everything just because your feelings got hurt? I smiled. It wasn't kind. No, Tyler. I'm letting you live your truth. You said I wasn't your father. So now you get to live like I'm not. He sputtered. That's not. This isn't. He couldn't even form the sentence. Good. Let him feel the weight of reality. The same weight I'd carried for him for 6 years while he spat on the floor I built under his feet. Karen walked in then, drawn by the shouting. She stood behind him, unsure of whose side she was on. That's when I knew I was alone in this, but I no longer cared. She's not paying either, I said, looking at her. Right? Karen didn't answer. Tyler turned, disbelief written across his face. You knew about this? I didn't, she said quickly. Not until this morning. I didn't know he. I asked her, I interrupted, if she was willing to step in, take over some of what I'd been doing. Tyler looked at her. And she looked down. That silence answered everything. He turned back to me, voice lower now. You don't understand. If I get kicked out of school, I'm screwed. You can't just abandon me. I stood up then. Not fast. Not threatening. Just done sitting. I didn't abandon you, Tyler. Carried you. When your real father disappeared, I stepped in. When your mom couldn't cover something, I covered it. When you needed rides, money, help, I gave. For years. His mouth opened, but I kept going. And what did I get back? You mocking me behind my back. Telling your friends I'm just Jim. Making it clear I'm not part of your family. Fine. You win. I'm not your father. I paused. Let it hang. So now? Now you get to find out what life is like without me. He tried to recover. So that's it? You're just cutting me off? Like I'm nothing? I looked him dead in the eye. No. I'm treating you the way you treated me. He stared for a moment longer, then stormed out. Slammed the door. Karen flinched but said nothing. Later that night, the second ripple hit. She found me in the garage organizing tools. That's where I always went when I needed distance from the noise. This is cruel, she said quietly. I didn't look at her. No, it's honest. He's just a kid, Jim. No, I said. He's a man who wants to make decisions without consequences. I'm just introducing him to the second part. She stepped closer. You've always helped him. I nodded. And I still would if I mattered to him. But I don't. Not as a man. Not as a father. Not even as a person. I was just an ATM. And I'm done being that. She didn't argue. Just stood there. The weight of her silence spoke more than any words could have. Over the next few days, the fallout grew. Emails. Phone calls. Messages from Tyler I didn't answer. Karen's voice, tight with guilt, asking if I'd reconsider. I didn't. Not because I wanted revenge. Because I needed boundaries. They say love is unconditional. That's not true. Respect is the condition. Without it, love becomes duty. Resentment. A slow death. Tyler needed to understand something no one had taught him. That you don't get to spit in the face of the person holding the rope, then scream when they let go. By the end of the week, he was begging Karen for help. She didn't have it. Not the funds. Not the will. She had relied on me for too long. Built her peace on my effort. Now the walls were buckling. The landlord called me once. Left a voicemail. Jim, just wondering what's going on with the lease. Tyler says he's on his own now. Needs help. Is that true? I didn't call back. I let the silence do what my words never could. That weekend, Tyler came again. This time, quieter. Eyes darker. Voice lower. I called my dad. The word tasted bitter on his tongue. Good. And he can't help. Said he doesn't have the money. I nodded. That sounds about right. He looked at me, not pleading, just confused. Like the world had shifted under his feet and he didn't know how to stand anymore. I thought you were supposed to be better than him. I met his eyes. I was. Then I walked away.